Hello and bienvenidos and welcome to Ticket to Life. I am Henry and I hope that you are having a fantastic day or evening. And if not, go buy yourself something. I don't mean a car or something like a house. I just mean something small like tea, coffee, adult beverage. And honestly, I'm surprised I didn't say chocolate or ice cream before I said a beverage. Oh well. Anyone have big plans for the 4th? Or did you do something? It matters when you're listening to this. Something special for the 4th? Do you know why we celebrate the 4th? A lot of people just don't even know why. They just like, oh, it's the 4th of July. Well, we all should. But did you know that a lot of people don't know? That's crazy because most of the listeners are adults and they're just like, it's another day, or maybe they forget. But many don't care and just know it's a federal holiday. Well, guess what? Here's your brief history lesson for the day. On the date of July 4th, the Declaration of Independence was signed. This declaration states that one God made all men equal and gave the rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Now, we all know we can backtrack. Now, this was again in 1776, that all men may be equal, but they're not treated equally. And this is for men and women, of course. But things have changed, some for the better, some for the worse, and some people think things haven't changed at all. It was the last series of steps that led the colonies to the final separation from Great Britain. Could you imagine if we'd had a king? I think it was King George. That I'm not really sure, so don't quote me. I think it was King George who was reigning at that time. So no thanks. Although I'm not too thrilled about those two running for president in the U.S. either. And that is just my opinion. And that's all the political things I have to say for now, as a lot of people are turning the dial to turn it off or go to another podcast. Why? Because I don't really like to talk about politics. I don't know politics well enough to be the person saying he said, she said, they said. But so that's why I really prefer not to talk about politics. So anyway, once the dependent British colonies became independent states, once we became independent states, that could make war, create alliances with foreign nations, and engage freely in commerce. So here's some fun facts about this. Of course, there's some historian that probably just accidentally hears my podcast and go, she's totally wrong. Of course, it could be a woman too. Oh, she's totally wrong. But anyway, maybe I am, maybe I'm not. Some fun facts about the 4th of July are that Americans usually enjoy about 150 million hot dogs during the 4th. That's a lot of hot dogs. I guess it's an easy little meal. I like hot dogs, but they're not like my favorite. I'll have one if I go to a Ranger game for baseball. That's what I'm talking about when I say the Rangers. Texas Rangers, World Series champions. But anyway, so Congress passed a law making Independence Day that holiday and June 28th of 1870. And 56 men, that's a good trivia question, 56 men signed the Declaration in Philadelphia. I don't know if a lot of you, unless you're a history buff, you may know all this, but I never sat there and counted them. You get the little imprints of the declarations, the copies, and I've never did. You look at what's his name, John Hancock, the biggest and fanciest signature. But anyway, 56 men signed the Declaration in Philadelphia. Are you surprised that no women signed it? No, we're not. Because no women were allowed, and it was a different time. Oh, but good old Betsy Ross made the country's first flag. To this day, things just never change. Women were sewing stuff. So, no, and men sew too. There's many tailors that are men. But anyway, George Washington asked her to make it. I guess they were friends. He went to her house. This is what I've read on Google It. I Googled it and I found it. So, that he went and visited her, and he liked the way she sewed and asked her to make our flag. I guess she couldn't say no to George. So, thanks to Betsy Ross. And I think that there should be a Betsy Ross Day, because without her, we would not have a beautiful American flag. So, Declaration of Independence, July 4th, 1776. Here's one more thing I bet you didn't know about Betsy Ross. She was married 3 times. Not 1 time, not 2 times, 3 times. That's a lot. So, husband number 1 was John Claypool, and he died in 1917. Husband number 2, Joseph Ashburn. He died 3 years after they married. And husband number 3 was John Ross, and he died just 2 years into her marriage. And one died in prison, and they died of some illness. Of course, if that were to happen now, she would be on Dateline or 2020, and there would be an investigation, right? Am I right? Do you know that's right? Wait, 3 husbands and they've all died? But no, Betsy Ross did not do anything bad to her husbands. It was a different time. People got sick, and when you got sick, you were sick. So just a bit of curiosity to me, how many of you are on your 3rd marriage? Well, if you're driving, don't raise your hand, of course. But if you're at home, raise your hand. I can't raise my hand on this one because this is my 2nd marriage. Well, we know that Betsy didn't have anything, didn't even think of divorce, unfortunately for her. All of those husbands died, and she had 7 children. Wow. Now, I know that there are some men and women who are divorced right now, and some with probably 7 children or more, or 1 or 2. And we know that they didn't plan on getting divorced when they said, I do. We don't get married, or at least I hope not, thinking, well, if it doesn't work out, I can always get a divorce and go back to my old life. I can tell you right now, after getting divorced, there is no going back to your old life because it doesn't exist anymore. We must always remember that we have to live in the now and not the past. You cannot bring back the life you had in the past. It's over, it's done with. You can't go back in time. I myself like to think about my past, but I don't ever want to go back there. I know so much more, and I wonder, how the heck did I live like that sometimes? The only thing that I can say is that I was on the single diet because I never really had many groceries in my apartment. I have made up for that diet in my adult, mature years. But I know I'm always talking about weight. It's funny. I accept for who I am. I can laugh that I am overweight. Yes, obese. I'm obese, according to the medical world. But I feel good. So that's the thing. I know. But anyway, back to this. I know that some of you, the stats I'm about to tell you are going to blow your mind because they blew mine. I was like, what? But the average length of a first marriage in the U.S. ends in divorce is only 8 years long. 8. Of course, my first marriage only lasted 3. I don't even think we made 3, but so that's interesting to me. Now, this is my 2nd marriage. As I said, I figure that this is my last. I love my husband, and he is irreplaceable. So, like I like to joke around and say, if he leaves me for a Vegas showgirl. But I've seen some of the Vegas showgirls. They're my age, and they did not age well. But of course, he could always leave me for a younger one. But if he were to do that, I would be done. And I always make a joke. I always say, I get the kids, I get the house, I get the grandkids. But seriously, I would be done. I don't think I want to do this again. unless it were with my husband. But marriage is yet another hard thing in life that we do. I tell you, this growing up thing can be for the birds sometimes. I guess the birds could handle it better than some of us. They just fly away. I don't know. But in marriage, a lot of arguments are about money. So if you're planning on getting married, make sure that you talk about finances beforehand. Talk about, do we want kids or don't? And I know that we all get caught up when we first fall in love and forget about these certain things that you really need, that are very important to talk about. It's really good to actually go see a marriage counselor before saying I do. A lot of people, well, we're not even married. I mean, most people, and I'm not saying everyone, but a lot of people live together now beforehand. And you get to know each other. Let's live together for a while and see if we like each other, because sometimes you may love someone, but you may not like them. It's so important in a marriage to know that you like someone. And that's it. My husband and I still like each other. I know I drive him nuts, but he still keeps me around. But if you do decide to go to a marriage counselor before saying I do, now I am not knocking the Catholic faith because I'm Catholic, but if you were told to go and talk to a priest or take the marriage classes, because there's always marital classes you need to take before getting married in the Catholic Church, I recommend that you go to talk to an Episcopal pastor. That is the closest thing, I believe, to the Catholic faith. They pretty much do everything. But guess what? The pastors are married. They're living it. They live it and they know it. Our Catholic priest, which I love all priests, our Catholic priests see it and they hear about it, but honestly, they don't live it. They don't get to live what marriage is. Our Catholic Church had we were in a shortage a few years ago, and it was a church I used to go to, and there was a shortage, so they were asking Episcopalian pastors to come and be priest. And some were married, and we did have a priest, and he was married, and he was older. But I can tell you, he was probably the wisest priest I have known I was in my 40s, and he was just amazing. He got it. He got the troubles of marriage. He got the troubles of kids and stuff because he was living it. And like I said, he was older. I say older. He's probably in his 60s or 70s. That's not really old to me now. But and he was amazing. And I'm not knocking my faith and my religion. It's just that they don't, and this is my opinion, they don't see what's actually happening because they've never lived in a marriage. Yes, they were married to the church, but they're not married to a human being. They're married to God, the church. Anyway. Well, God, if somebody else wants to cover that podcast, let me know. So I'm just saying, if my phone rings while I'm recording this, or after it's been published on the podcast platforms, I would not be surprised if the Vatican would call and say, we no longer want you in our faith. But no, I will just send it to voicemail if the Vatican calls. Hopefully it'll pop up and say, Vatican's calling. So anyway, that's how good of a Catholic I am. But most importantly, I am being honest. That's how I feel about that. So that's just me. And how many years ago, I remember reading that financial problems were a big problem in marriages. But now the top factor is lack of commitment. Surprise. It does not surprise me when I read that. Is 75% lack of commitment. And guess what? Number 2 was infidelity. Comes in second. Sounds like racehorses, right? Too much family conflict in the family. And then there's the young age of marriage. So everything is different. Now, this one kind of bothered me because it was like at the bottom of the list, and maybe this was the top 10. I'm not sure. I don't even remember. I read it and I thought I could remember it, but I'm funny about things like that. I think I can remember things. But this one really did surprise me, and it was domestic violence is 23% reasons of divorce. 23%. Now, you and I know that there is a lot of domestic violence out there. Unless you're a blind eye, you pretend you don't know about it, you don't want to see it, you don't want to hear it, but it's out there. And that just surprised me, 23%. So, those that are enduring that type of relationship, that you really need to think, why are you staying in that marriage? I'm not saying to leave your spouse, but I'm just think about, why are you still there? Why do you want to live like that? And if you have children, why do you want your kids to see that? Because they're going to think that's what life is all about. I think that all men and women deserve happiness. No matter who you are, what type of family you come from, you deserve happiness. I know that it's easier said than done when in this situation. Oh, well, she says just leave. I just can't pick up and leave. You might be able to if you plan. I'm always about a plan. Have a plan. I just want you to know that there is someone always there to talk to, and you can call 1-800-799-7233. That number again is 1-800-799-7233. Or you can actually text 88788. And that text number again is 88788. And you can text someone. And you're anonymous. They're not going to come knocking at your house to try to save you. They just want to see if you're okay. And I don't know. I've never had to call, by the grace of God. But just to let you know, there's help out there for you if you are in an abusive relationship, because you don't deserve that. No one does. No man or woman deserves that. And I know some people think, oh, women are the only ones abused. Nope. Children are abused. Men are abused, believe it or not. Yes, men are abused. But I can tell you that you don't ever expect to get married and start thinking of divorce after the first argument. Some people may say, I should have never have gotten married to you. Yeah, okay. We all say silly stuff like that when we're younger, I guess. And also I want to tell you that there will be arguments, and there's going to be days of not speaking to one another. And in my opinion, if you don't want to talk to that person for a while, or they don't want to talk to you, and you're like, oh, you ready to talk? And they go, nope, leave it at that, because more than likely they're going to say something pretty hateful and hurtful. I think silence is golden to a certain degree. Trust me, they'll break eventually and talk to you. I used to be the silent person. I was like, I don't want to say anything because I know I was going to say something. I know, believe it or not, people, I could keep my mouth shut for a little bit without spewing things. But yeah, so there's going to be times like that. And again, it's hard. Again, another job that is hard work, and benefits are awesome though. 40 years later, I'm still with my wonderful husband. So the one sound piece of advice that I have, of course, remember, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a therapist, not a life coach. I'm Henrie. And my piece of advice to you is communication. It's the key. But you need to have that communication prior to saying I do. You need to be able to say something. And ladies and gentlemen, you need to learn to take constructive criticism. If you're going to have a conversation, there's something that's bothering you about that person, and they tell you, you need to say, okay, I'll work on it. I know that, again, is easier said than done, but it is hard for someone to tell you something that they're not that crazy about, And if you love that person, you can change. We can all change. We all know that now. But learning to communicate is so important. And your parents may not have had communication, and you saw it. Well, if you don't want that type of relationship, you need to work on communication prior to. Because of that, some people scream and shout, and they do say, I didn't mean it. One of my things is, it's so important because getting married is one of the wonderful blessings we can have in our lives. Yet, it can be the worst for some. And divorce, I will tell you, in my first one, I felt like a failure. I was like, how did I fail? I failed. And I blamed myself for everything. But I didn't fail. Honestly, I came out of that marriage stronger than I could have ever dreamed. So here's a little bit of my story about my first marriage. And I've done another podcast about my marriage, but I don't know what I did, I'm done. I think that's the one. I guess, divorce is such a high rate of divorce. I want people to know what it is and that it's out there and that you're not alone. So anyway, my first husband, Steve, and yes, that is his real name. We won't use his last name, was gone like all the time. I mean, he did work. That to my knowledge, he didn't have a fling. He could have. But one of my telltales of my first marriage was that we would always argue on Fridays. It was right before the weekend. We would always have this huge argument. Not right after we got married. It was probably about 6 months to a year after. We would just argue every stinking weekend, every Friday. And I think another red flag was he would play golf. 2 rounds of golf on Saturday. That's 18 holes. That's 36 holes. That's a lot of golf. Hello, Henry. Someone doesn't want to be home. And on Sundays, then he would go have 1 round of golf. And on one birthday, the birthday before he left me a pair of earrings with a note that said, "Happy birthday." Yes, I was a weekend golf widow. Now that I think about it, what a jerk. And what was I thinking? So finally he left, and I will tell you, it was hard mentally, physically, financially, but I did it. And he was not abusive. He just wanted out and said he wanted to date again. And yes, he wanted to date this person, but he didn't want to have a fling. So I guess, if he did or didn't, I don't know. But anyway, so I was thinking, wait, what didn't we say for better or worse? Well, apparently we did, but it didn't mean anything. And thank God it didn't mean anything to him, because I hit the jackpot with Jeff. And for some of those it's easier for me to say, because we're all in different relationships or have been, where you're getting a divorce, and it's very hard on some. Some people could care less. They just want to go on with a different life. But Jeff is such a blessing to me, and he has made the last 40 years of ups and downs a great story to share, and what love really means and supposed to be, and how it's supposed to be. So I think that it's so important that we show, if you have children, show some affection towards your person, your other, spouse or boyfriend, girlfriend. I don't know. A lot of people just live together and have families. Not everyone, so don't get upset. But I have had friends set me up with a sudden talking negative about their marriage and about their spouse, later to find out that my friend was cheating on their husband. That's that play on, oh, well, I'm going to make you not like him so that you'll understand why I cheated. And I think that's horrible, but that's what people do. And that's awful. And of course, men, he had no clue. He had no clue. The husband, of course. And yet I have friends that have no clue that their husbands are even cheating. And they just thought, oh, well, he's just working a lot. Oh, well, I'm sure that's my cologne I used to wear. I don't know. Some women and some men are just in total denial of someone cheating and hoping it's just going to go away. Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. We've all heard that before. So if you are going through a hard time right now and your hopefully significant other would consider counseling, and to get people into counseling for some reason, I don't know why, one will, the other won't. I've never been to counseling. I probably need to go to counseling for something. I'm not sure what. Hopefully not my marriage. But it's just hard to get that other person in there. Because sometimes they just don't want to make repairs on the marriage. They would rather I don't want to go. No, this is it. We're done. So when you say I do, I hope it's forever when you find that person. But if it isn't, I'm not saying go divorce them immediately. You will be okay. If you are going through a divorce, please know that you are not alone. And that someone out in the world is going through the same identical thing. It may be a different reason that they are going through, it could be just stress in the marriage. It could be kids. And I even knew another couple, they got married and never discussed about having kids. What? Why did y'all not talk about having kids? Where she wanted kids. No, he wanted kids. She didn't. So it's so important to talk and learn to communicate prior to saying, I do. Yet divorce is always the easy outlet, but it's not really. It really isn't. It takes a toll on your body, on your mind, on your life. And know that you can't go back to that other life. You can kind of live in the same place or do whatever, but it's not going to be the same because your friends have also changed. Know that you will be fine with acceptance of this choice you make if you choose to get a divorce, which it's never easy, but you will be okay. And remember who you were before you got married and the life you had, but don't try to relive that life because you can't. You'll be a bit older, hopefully more than 2 months when the marriage, but you'll be a little bit older. And if it's a 2-year marriage or 3 or 5, you're definitely going to be wiser. You're going to know what it's like to be married because, again, not easy. Marriage, you think it's, this wonderful. We're going to live together. We're going to have a beautiful home, beautiful family. But sometimes that beautiful and, we all want the happily ever after. But sometimes it's just not there with a person. And sorry to say, when you think it is, that's why I'm all about quick, small weddings, because if you invest so much in a wedding and it doesn't work out, you're like, I could have used that for a house. So anyway, once divorce is done, take it easy on how you're living your life, and don't jump into another relationship right away. Just to say, I'll show you I can get someone else. That's not good. I'm just telling you, that is not good. Find out what you want out of your life that will make you happy. As I say, we all deserve to be happy, and life is short. So don't be hanging on by a thread, hoping when you know you've been in an awful relationship, but neither one of you wants to file for divorce. That's where the lack of communication starts. Communicate with your people, your loved ones. When I say your people, your loved ones, your family members, your spouse, your friends. Communication is the absolute best thing you can do. So this is Henrie. Thank you for listening. Go find your blessings. And until next week, I hope you have a fabulous week. See you then.